It's not uncommon to hear that movies, TV shows, books, or even video games have correctly predicted something that later happened after their release. In fact, we've even covered rumours just like this on the channel before, such as the video game Myst apparently predicting the Great Hanshin earthquake 2 years before it happened. When you consider the sheer number of media out there, then statistically some of them are going to get things right, simply by pure coincidence. But that, of course, doesn't make it any less unnerving when it happens. And this week, we're going to look at an interesting case of Shin Megami Tensei, perhaps foretelling the future. The Shin Megami Tensei games are a series that doesn't need much introduction. They're set in the near future of Tokyo and you, the protagonist, battle demons in turn-based combat. You can also recruit these demons by talking to them if you don't want to fight them, and even fuse demons to create entirely new ones. There are numerous games in the series, with the most recent one coming out just a few months ago. But for today's mystery, we're looking at the first game that came out in 1992. Shin Megami Tensei released in Japan for the Super Famicom on August 30th, 1992. Developers viewed it as a remake of the original Megami Tensei series, and so development apparently proceeded quite smoothly, considering that they already knew where the story would be going. It was set in Tokyo, and used several real Tokyo locations as settings. For example, you could visit Tokyo Tower, Ginza, the Terminal Echo Building, and the point of this week's video, Inokashira Park. If you're unaware, Inokashira Park is one of the most popular parks in all of Tokyo. The park was given to Tokyo in 1913, and then officially opened on May 1st, 1917. The park has a small petting zoo, an aquarium, a temple dedicated to Benzaiten, and is especially famous for its cherry blossoms in spring, and its large pond in which you can ride boats. There's a famous urban legend associated with this pond that states that if you ride on a boat with your partner, then soon afterwards you will break up. This is because it makes Benzaiten jealous. But that's not all Inokashira Park is famous for. On April 23rd, 1994, a cleaner discovered several body parts in trash bags when cleaning the trash cans at the park. This led to an investigation into what became known as the Inokashira Park dismemberment case, and I've covered this particular incident on the channel before, so I'll leave a link in the comments if you want to go and check it out for more information. But in short, although body parts were found, nobody was ever arrested for the murder, nor was a motive ever discovered. To this day, the case remains unsolved, and because the statute of limitations passed in 2009, even if police did find the killer, they would now be unable to charge them. What made the case so strange, despite the fact no killer or motive was ever found, was that the body parts were cut into even 20cm pieces with an electric saw, and all the blood had been drained. This would require someone highly skilled and trained, meaning likely a doctor or someone in a similar field. There were no signs the body had been beaten before death, nor any trace of drugs either. The case was a riddle wrapped in an enigma, and to this day, nobody knows who did it or why. But how does this relate to Shin Megami Tensei, a game that released just over a year prior? Well, the game starts with a woman telling you, the protagonist, that there has been a murder near Inokashira Park. Did you know that there was a murder at Inokashira Park to the south of the station? It was really bad. And that's it. A seemingly innocent reference in a game about Tokyo being infested with demons and all sorts of bad things. Easy to brush off and forget almost as quickly as you saw it. Except that just over a year later, a very real murder did take place at Inokashira Park. Or, at the very least, was discovered there. And yes, it was really bad, just like was said in the game. Naturally, once news of the incident started to hit the media, Shin Megami Tensei fans remembered that little throwaway line in the game, and suddenly it became a whole lot scarier in hindsight. Almost like the game itself predicted it. Of course, the reference was nothing more than a coincidence. And unless you're the type that believes that games really can predict the future, you're not likely to think of it as anything more than that. But as far as coincidences go, this one is still pretty scary, and it adds to the long list of creepy rumors and Easter eggs that are attached to this series. Did the developers foresee a murder and include it in their game for authenticity? Of course not. But years later, it certainly became a creepy historical tidbit. Shin Megami Tensei 2 was released in Japan in 1994 and soon became a hit for its interesting gameplay and themes. Before long, it also became famous for something else. An urban legend was about to be born. According to the legend, there was an extremely small chance that, upon starting the game, a black screen would appear with the words Sugu ni Kese in red letters covering the screen, accompanied by a loud buzzer. Sugu ni Kese means delete immediately, and players were both fascinated by the creepiness of it and also the extremely low chance of getting such a screen to appear. But did it even really exist? And how was one supposed to get it in the first place? Despite coming out in 1994, it's believed that the legend didn't become popular until it was shared on Nichan in 2003 in a thread about scary retro game bugs, although the story itself had already been posted a year earlier, in 2002. The internet had grown much more common by then, and sharing rumours became a whole lot easier as well. A year later, in another thread about retro game bugs, someone replied claiming to be a developer on the game. Being 10 years after the game's release, they figured it was time to reveal what actually went on. They claimed that hiding Easter eggs such as this was all the rage at the time, and he personally had included the Sugu ni Kese screen. Originally, it was programmed with a 1 in 256 chance, but that made it appear far too frequently. So, it was up to 1 in 65,536. But the Easter egg was quickly found and thus erased from further game printings. Because of this so-called developer, the rumor expanded and changed to include the fact that the screen existed only in the first printing of the game, and there was a 1 in 65,536 chance of getting it to appear. This meant you'd have to reset your original print game over 65,000 times, just to hopefully reach the odds of the screen appearing. And, being RNG, the screen wasn't even guaranteed to appear. It could happen the first time, or it could happen on the millionth time. Getting the screen to appear was extremely difficult, however, and nobody was ever able to come forward with proof of it. Over time, the rumors got even more confused, with people claiming that this screen actually only existed in the first print of the original game, and not the second. Either way, nobody was ever able to get it in either the first or second game. Even with such high odds, you would think that with so many people trying that eventually someone would find it. Yet they never did. So what was going on? A writer for the website Buzz Plus News went straight to one of the game's creators, Suzuki Kazunari, to ask him about the legend. Did it really exist? Or was it all a giant hoax that everyone had fallen for? Suzuki straight out denied that such a screen existed. He had heard the rumors himself, and even spoke to the programmers involved in the game, but they all denied including such a thing. They admitted that creating a random screen to show up at the start of the game was possible, but nobody had gone ahead and tried it. When pressed on whether one of the programmers might have done it without his knowledge, again, Suzuki denied that it could have happened, claiming that the programmers were all serious and hard-working people, and every single one of them, Even the sub-programmers denied ever creating such a screen. He did, however, propose a reason for why the urban legend came to exist in the first place. He believed this could be traced back to a trick an outsourced developer included in the first game. There was a demon called Bug that, when encountered, came with a very low chance of seeing the message, "Kabu-chan has started debugging." Players, of course, found this message, and when it got back to the game's director, he got upset at its inclusion, reportedly going off at the developer for including something so useless when they were already tight on memory as it was. He also reportedly ordered it removed from further printings of the game, meaning it could only be found in the first print run. After that, fans assumed that the same thing could have been done again in the second game, and thus a legend was born. But where did the Sugu ni Kese message come from exactly? It seems a little strange for fans to come up with something like that all by themselves, especially if it didn't even exist in the first place. It's here that the story takes another strange turn, because as it turned out, it once did exist in the game's coding. Suzuki mentioned that during development, if the game was left untouched for a certain period of time, the message, "Sugu ni Kese," would appear on screen, and this had been coded into the game. But it was removed before the game went on sale. He believed that one of the staff members working on the game then released that image onto the internet, and the legend was born. And yet, despite all of this, there was one person who apparently successfully found the screen, even sharing footage of it on Nico Nico Video in 2010, rather than just sharing a screenshot. You can watch it for yourself right here. This video soon came into question though, as at first glance it's easy to see how the video could have been faked. After the Atlas title screen, it cuts straight to a static screenshot, the one often seen around the web, and there's a loud noise that plays over it. Nothing else moves. The creator of the video eventually came out and admitted that it was fake, and they had created it after the legend became popular on Nichan. And as Nichan users continued digging into the legend, they discovered that Shin Megami Tensei 2 never had a first print run to begin with. The game was never revised, so later copies were exactly the same as the original ones. Claiming that there's a bug or Easter egg hidden in the original print run of a game is a fairly common tactic, because that makes it harder for other people to test and thus debunk a legend. This is especially so before ROMs and copies became as abundant and easy to find as they are today. But in the end, there was no Sugu ni Kese screen in the game, but the legend wasn't entirely without some truth to it. It had existed, once, although not as an opening screen, but as a neat little trick if you left the game idle for too long. It was eventually removed before the game's release, and it was likely a staff member who leaked that little tidbit along with a screenshot. Because an Easter egg similar to this had been found in the first game, fans took this story and ran with it, creating a story on Nichan that soon spread far and wide, and was backed up with the screenshot as proof. But in the end, the urban legend was just that. no such screen existed, and although it took decades for the truth to come out, people still talk about it to this day. Some rumors die hard, and this one refuses to go away. On July 14, 2007, a user posted a thread on Nichan. Is there anyone here who knows the game Tegami on the Super Famicom? This was the beginning of what would come to be known as the cursed Super Famicom game. The user began by mentioning that they'd seen something about the game on Nichan before, probably on the VIP or occult boards, and that it was a sound novel in the same vein as Otogiriso or Kamaitachi no Yoru. It was privately created, and they were unsure if the game had ever been on sale, but it was a rather dark story that began immediately after the opening title screen. According to what the user had read, the creator committed suicide after making the game, and of course, this made people want to play it even more. The thread the user had read was likely a post from February 24 of that same year. In it, another user spoke about a game called Tegami that existed only as a ROM. It never got a cartridge release. It was actually supposed to be a trilogy, but only the first part of the story was released. You can watch a playthrough of the game right here on this channel, but in short, the game is a warning about the dangers of copying software and the effects that can have on hardworking creators. The thread mentioned that the creator of the game committed suicide afterwards, but that wasn't actually where rumors of the game being cursed began. Going back even further, another thread was posted on August 20th, 2006, where a Nichan user spoke about a game they had found while cleaning up their bookshelf. That game was Tegami for the Super Famicom. The poster describes the game as we know it today, but then goes even further, explaining how the protagonist has to deliver a letter, the game's namesake, Tegami, partway through the story. However, on the way to a certain hill to deliver the letter, the game whites out, and they can't get any further. The poster assumes that it's a bad cartridge, not unusual for old games, but there's something about it that bugs him. They lend the game to a friend, and then a month later, that friend goes missing. 6 months later, they find an item belonging to said missing friend on a hill outside the city. Just like in the game. They then hear something popping through the post at the front door, and when they check it out, it's the game. It's come back. The poster, terrified, tosses the game in a nearby river, but at some point, they find it back in their bookshelf, bringing them to their reason for posting. The user was undoubtedly trolling, because no cartridge of the game was ever made. The actual game does exist, but only as a ROM, and it ends before the part where the user mentions the protagonist leaving to post a letter. The opening title screen starts with Part 1, meaning it's likely that follow-ups were intended, but ultimately, they never got made. And this is where things get weird. People who played the game claimed to get different scenes to others. Some ended earlier, others ended later. Some people claimed there were multiple choice options in their games, while others had a straight story with no choice. Some saw the protagonist hand a letter over, others saw him go to the hill, and others ended long before that. How could people be playing the same game, but ending up with such wildly different experiences? One answer, which may seem obvious now, is that they were actually playing different games. The title Tegami, or letter, is so broad that it's possible people were playing different games, and didn't even know it. Another explanation is that people were joining in on the mystery and adding fuel to the fire, claiming things that never happened to add layers to the already creepy urban legend that was developing. And then, more and more stories began popping up that people who played the game were disappearing, fanning the flames for all to see. If there's one thing Nichan is good at, it's creating creepy stories out of thin air. But what about the game itself? It does actually exist after all, although only in ROM format. You can watch it on this very channel. The end credits of the game reveal it was written, created, and programmed by someone going by the name Kami. Nichan users went digging and discovered that someone going by the same name also created a PC emulator way back in 1993. It's believed that Tegami was then created 2 years later, likely in response to more and more people illegally copying games, to let them know how that affected creators like Kami. Little is known about him or her other than that, and Kami doesn't appear to have created any other games since then. Did they really commit suicide after finishing the game? It certainly makes for a terrifying story, and adds to the mystery of the urban legend. But the truth is, we may never know. Despite their pleas in-game not to copy and distribute the software illegally, very little is truly lost on the internet. And in 2002, someone brought the game up in a thread about interesting Super Famicom games people were playing at the time. Another thread in 2003 saw a poster asking for other users to share a fan-made Super Famicom game called Tegami, meaning that around that time, people already knew of it and were playing it. But it appears that the game remained a little-known secret until that particular post in 2006, where someone built a creepypasta out of it. And then, the legend took on a life of its own. Everyone wanted to play the cursed Super Famicom game, and everyone wanted to add their little piece to the lore. The fact that so little information was available about the game made it easy for people to build a story around it. Did people really go missing after playing Tegami? Plenty of them are still around, including myself, so it seems unlikely. But, if I do mysteriously go missing soon, well, you have my permission to blame the game. In June 1987, a game for the Famicom was released in Japan called Hokkaido Serial Murders Case, Disappearance in Okhotsk. Please forgive my pronunciation of that word. It's an interesting game about some detectives investigating a murder in Tokyo Bay that sends them all the way to Hokkaido to crack the case. It was a port of a PC game that had been made in conjunction with Login magazine, which would later spin off into Famitsu magazine, and it was in that particular magazine that an urban legend regarding the game would be born. In an issue of Famitsu released on September 13th, 1991, 4 years after the game's release on Famicom, there was a short article in the game. Please look at the photo on the right. It's an ordinary, regular second-hand game of Hokkaido Serial Murders Case, Disappearance in Okhotsk. And, on that note, embarrassingly, our little company released this game for 5,800 yen, tax not included, in June 1987. But what about it, you say? This was followed by a short anecdote that a reader had sent into the magazine regarding the game. I'm a little behind the times, but I'm a 23-year-old office lady who has recently gotten into Famicom games. The church in my town holds a bazaar once a month. They sell delicious cookies, so I always show my face there, and not too long ago, there was a game in the recycling corner. It was rather cheap, so I picked it up. But there's something strange about it. The game won't start even if I put the password in, and blood appeared beneath one of the character's eyes. I'm scared even just keeping the game around now. I'll send you a proof photo as well. Aichi Prefecture, Maruko. True to her word, the reader sent in a photo, which Famitsu published. As you can see, there's a shot of one of the characters from the game with blood underneath her eyes. Blood that shouldn't be there. The Famitsu staff claimed the reader sent her a copy of the cartridge as well, and so they checked it themselves to see if she was telling the truth. It appeared she was, because they were also having trouble getting the game to work properly, and when they got to the scene in question, blood appeared beneath the character Makiko's eyes. But perhaps scariest of all, there was even more blood beneath her eyes compared to the photo that the reader had sent in. It appeared the blood was increasing each time someone played it. What could it all mean? Was the game really cursed? In 2001, the urban legend appeared again on the Ni Channel forums. In a thread on the games board dedicated especially to the game, someone left the following comment. I just remembered, about 3 years after the release of the Famicom version, Famitsu did a type of ghost special that featured the game. Did anyone else see it? After playing Disappearance in Okhotsk for the first time in a while, something was strange about it. In the close-up scene of Makiko by Lake Mashu, her eyes were bleeding. Then, each time we played, more and more blood appeared. It said something like that. There was a picture with blood coming out of her eyes and it scared the crap out of me, being what the game is and all. Several other users remarked that they remembered that particular issue and urban legend as well. But was it true? Was there really a cursed copy of the game floating around in which one of the characters' eyes started bleeding? As it turned out, no, of course not. The entire story was fabricated by Famitsu themselves. In fact, the story was merely one of several published in the issue, a sort of ghost special like the Ni Channel user mentioned, and the point was for readers to guess which of the stories was fake. There was no cursed copy of the game. Makiko's eyes didn't really bleed. It was all made up and doctored for the issue. In fact, every single story turned out to be fake. None of them were true. Of course, numerous children read this issue and took it at face value, which helped the urban legend to spread around schools at the time. While many people knew or figured out that the story was fake, others didn't learn until much later on, long after the rumours had spread far and wide. The same Ni Channel user remarked at the end of his comment that it wasn't until several issues later that it was revealed to be fake. But naturally, not everyone who read that first issue with the story went on to read the final reveal, so an urban legend was born. It was an interesting little experiment that proves even if you reveal something to be fake, some people will still continue to believe it anyway. Erika and Satoru's Dream Adventure was released on the Famicom in Japan on September 27, 1988. It was a rare two-player adventure game that includes a lot of searching for items and solving quizzes. It's a cute game and many in Japan remember it fondly. But, unbeknownst to most at the time, it was also hiding a dark secret. One that wouldn't be found until 2001, 13 years later. As it turned out, by pressing a certain series of buttons at the end of the game, it would take you to a message hidden in the game from one of the developers. And, to put it kindly, it wasn't a very nice message. But first things first, to unlock this secret message, you have to do the following. It's a fairly complicated and lengthy process, so it's no surprise that people didn't find it until well after a decade later. Once you reach the end screen, you have to leave it for 18 minutes. At this point, the screen will turn black and white. Wait another 18 minutes, and the screen will turn sepia. Wait 55 more minutes, and the background music will disappear. Next, you need to press A, B, Start, Select, and Left on Controller 1, while someone presses A, B, and Right at the same time on Controller 2. At this point, some new background music will kick in, Then again, on controller 1, you have to press B, select, and right, while someone presses B, right, and down on controller 2 at the same time. If you manage to do this successfully, the screen will change and you'll get a hidden message from someone calling themselves Hidemushi. And this message isn't pretty. Let's take a look at what he has to say. This song sure takes me back. They were good times. Everyone was professional then. But guys these days, come on. It's finally over. It was nothing but good memories. Piss off. Let me take this opportunity to deliver a few thanks. First, Ogura Kaoru, who ran off with a man partway through development. You, yes you, don't come into work without showering after having sex 6 times the night before. Next, Omachi Tatsuya. You, yes you, quit screwing around at work. You come in late on the day we have to deliver the ROM like it's nothing. I'm not gonna ignore this anymore, even if you do give me more dirty magazines. With your fat gut hanging out, it's no wonder all you can get is a kiss after spending 18,000 yen. The Namco debugger, Takano Kenji. Quit nitpicking the design when you're only a part-timer. And the one who dragged things down the most, Goto Kiyoharu. You, yes you. If I had a time machine, I'd send you all the way back to the Edo period. Do your stupid riddles there. I feel better now. Not Goto Kiyoharu. You, yes you. Ugh, disappear. Come to think of it, I'm thankful to some people. Okada-san, who took all the good parts. I know all about your abnormal fetishes. Yamagishi-kun, who didn't use soap until the game was finished. Please, go ahead to your heart's content. Iwata-kun, who did his best for most of the project. I'm sorry I got angry. Please, keep doing your best. And the person who no doubt had it toughest, Fujimura Uropyu. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Goto is the one I hate, not you. Plus Takayama, Kudo, Suzuki, Maki, Kaneko, Aihara, the angel of my heart Sato-chan, Iga-kun, everyone, thank you. Yokoji, thank you for all your hard work. I'll give this game to your wife on her birthday. And you can get one final message at the end if you press A, B, and up on controller 1 at this point. Kazumushi, I'm sorry I wasn't able to come home much. I love you. I always have. Hidemushi. So, there's a lot to take in here. Hidemushi is obviously not the developer's actual name, and people debated for a while who he might be. There were 2 main possibilities. Erika and Satoru's dream adventure didn't have any end credits, but another game by the same company around the same time did. In Bikkuriman World, also made by Atlus, there are 2 names that begin with Hide. The game designer, Kubota Hideyuki, and the programmer, Kuwamura Hideo. Although the hidden message was first spoken about on Ni Channel in 2001, it wasn't until 2004 that people actually took notice of it and started to make a fuss about who the various people involved could be. There were rumors that Hidemushi had long left the gaming industry by that point, and considering the rant he left in this particular video game, that's not surprising. He was supposedly close to 50 years old in 2004, meaning he would have been in his late 30s around the time the game was made. And supposedly, he was a handsome womanizer who may or may not have moved into the night entertainment business after leaving the programming world. Another poster also claimed that he was a crazy dick who ransacked the company before running off. As such, most people agreed that Hidemushi was likely the programmer, Kuwamura Hideo, considering that he hid the message so well inside the game's files that it took people over a decade to find it. Whether it really was him and what happened to Hidemushi afterwards, however, remains a mystery. So then, who were some of the many people that Hidemushi called out in his hidden message? Again, this has been a topic of discussion for many years. In the same Bikkuriman world credits, one of the game designers is listed as Iwata Yuichi, who may be a possibility for the Iwata-kun, who did his best for most of the project, one of the few people Hidemushi had only good words for. The same game also lists Aihara Seigo as the graphic designer, and Takayama Hirohiko as working on sound. Aihara and Takayama were two of the names in Hidemushi's final thank you list, so there's a good chance that these were two of the people he was talking about. Fujihara, who Hidemushi mentioned as having it the toughest, was potentially Fujimura Hideki, who also worked as support on Bikkuriman World, while Yokoji may be Yokoyama Hideyuki, who also worked support on the same game, and then moved on to a whole bunch of Shin Megami Tensei games. Several other names in the thank you list have also been linked to people from the Shin Megami Tensei series. Okada-san, who took all the good parts, may be Okada Koji, also from the Shin Megami Tensei series, while Goto Kiyoharu, who Hidemushi seemed to have a particular dislike for, may now be a lecturer at the Tokyo Design Technology Center. Of course, all of this is just conjecture, and there's no way to know for certain whether these are the same people, but at least for those who moved on to other Atlus games, it seems likely. As for the rest of the names that Hidemushi clearly had a distaste for, to date, there's been no consensus on who these people might be. Despite using numerous full names in his lengthy call-out, nobody is quite sure who they are. It's possible that, like him, they moved on from the gaming world after this game, or perhaps he used slight aliases or nicknames to get around straight up calling people out. Either way, debate still rages and people are still looking. Now, this lengthy rant wasn't even the only hidden message in the game, and players managed to find even more, but I'll cover those in another video at a different date. Hidemushi sure had a lot to say, and this wasn't the end of it. It would appear that Japanese devs in the 80s and 90s just loved hiding hidden messages in their video games. This week, we have yet another for you, although this one is a little more risque than most. In 1986, TechnoQuest released Super Monkey Adventure for the Famicom. The game was based on the Journey to the West novel, and is considered by many to be one of the hardest and most nonsensical games ever released. It was promoted as a role-playing adventure game, and these days falls into the action RPG genre. But we're not here to talk about the game itself, or how hard it is. We're here to talk about that hidden message. This message wasn't discovered until 2002, 16 years after the game's release, when someone analysing the ROM data just happened to come across it. And what exactly did that message have to say? Well, this is designer Nakajima Kaoru. I'm 26, born in Toyokawa City, Aichi Prefecture, 1960. I want to lick nani nani. I want a woman who'll nani nani me. I love nani nani and nani nani. Those final beeped out words were related to a woman's private parts. Indeed. The designer gives his name as Nakajima Kaoru. Somebody with this name has continued working on graphic design and character art for a while now, including work on Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. Is this the same person? Well, probably, but little else is known about him other than this message he left on a game back in the mid-80s. It seemed to be all the rage at the time, and it did take nearly 2 decades until someone found it, so he certainly did well hiding it. Why he felt the desire to leave this particular message is anyone's guess, but it's probably safe to say that he didn't expect anyone would actually find it. He was undoubtedly just having a bit of fun. But sadly, no one has ever been able to get in contact with him to find out how he feels about his deepest desires as a 26-year-old, now being known to the world at large. Considering the trouble he went to hide it in the game in the first place, I'd say he probably finds it pretty funny. Since then, people have discovered a way to get the message to display without digging into the ROM as well. Naturally, it will require an actual cartridge of the game, as well as another game called Haja no Fuin, or The Seal of the Dark Lord. I don't know why this particular game, but it works. First, put Seal of the Dark Lord into the Famicom. Once the title screen appears, pull the game cartridge out and then put Super Monkey Adventure in instead. And voila! The hidden message will display on the TV. While it's not quite up there with the secret rant hidden in Erika and Satoru's dream adventure, it certainly adds to the rich plethora of Japanese devs hiding messages in old family-friendly games that were most certainly not family-friendly. And there are still even more to come. Boku no Natsuyasumi, or My Summer Vacation, is a nice relaxing game you can play on PS1. You play as Boku, a 9-year-old boy who goes to stay with his aunt and uncle in the countryside during his August vacation from school. You can explore the region, go fishing, fly a kite, collect items, or just kick back and do nothing at all. The game takes place over the 31 days of August. There is, however, an interesting glitch that lets you continue playing past that, into August 32nd and beyond. And it's here that things get really weird. To reach August 32nd, first you have to clear the game. Once you've done that, you'll see the August 31st clear data on the save menu. Load the clear file and you'll get a screen with Summer Memories. From there, click the Picture Diary option. The diary will open to the last day of August, August 31st. Hover over the Modoru, or Go Back option, and then press up. This will take the cursor to the upper left of the screen. A text block with Oyasumi, break, will appear. Press it and select Yes. The game will send you back in, thinking that it's still August 31st. At first, everything seems normal. It's like the summer holidays are continuing for yet another day. You get to watch the family do their relaxing morning exercise before the screen fades out and you head back into the game. It's at this point that you'll usually see the family eating breakfast and hanging around. Yet this time, Boku finds himself in the house all alone. It's August 32nd, a day that doesn't exist, and it would seem he's the only person there. Exploring the house doesn't get much better, as it would appear Boku can't leave either. He's trapped by invisible walls, keeping him all alone in the house, in a world of his own. If you go upstairs, you can't even enter the rooms. You're locked out of everything. You're free to run around an entirely empty house for a while, but it's certainly creepy. You're unable to do anything in this state until the clock passes 8 AM. Once that happens, you can go upstairs and enter your room once again, because there's not a whole lot else you can do in this empty, lonely world. And you can write another diary entry to finish the day. Here you can see that the game doesn't know what to do with the date, so it doesn't list the day at all. By going up to Oyasumi, you can sleep and finish the day, bringing you to August 33rd, and it's here that things get even creepier, starting with the date itself. The game text starts to warp and corrupt in places, and after the usual morning ritual, Boku finds himself back inside the house, with some interesting guests. This time he's not alone, but as you can see, his family is far from normal. Boku's uncle has corrupted and turned blue. There's something wrong with his cousin's face, and his aunt is missing most of her body entirely. Not to mention Boku himself. The text in August 33rd remains corrupted, but unlike the 32nd, you're able to freely leave the house and explore right away. There are all sorts of glitches you can find on August 33rd. For example, if you approach the upper left section of the workshop and press the action button, you can get your blue and transparent uncle to suddenly warp in. If you wish to make yourself disappear, you can do so by equipping the net and then moving to a different scene. Boku will disappear, which, considering the world he's currently inhabiting, might be a good thing. You can bring Boku back by equipping the gloves. You can also have Boku fly around in the sky by equipping the net near the top of the mountain, moving to the next scene which places you at the very top, and then equipping the gloves to bring yourself back. You can also get rid of Boku's legs, if cosplaying as Teke Teke is your thing. To do this, you have to first go somewhere where you can fish. Press A to bring out the fishing rod, and then, just like before, equip the net, and bam, you're now Teke Teke. You can return to normal by trying to fish again. While running around this terrifying, physics-breaking world, you have to be careful to return home before night, or the game freezes. Or maybe the creatures lurking on the fringes of August 33rd get you. Who knows? If you return home by evening, then you'll get treated to Auntie cooking something special for dinner. What is she making? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's no doubt something interesting. When you go to end this terrifying day, you'll be treated to the picture diary bugging out, which pretty much sums up the world after August 31st. Then, the diary goes blank. Or perhaps it was blank all along, and Boku's summer holidays were nothing but a dream in his head that, in the end, turned into a nightmare before he was forced to wake up. The August 32nd and onwards glitch is, of course, just a glitch. It's not part of the story, and it certainly wasn't a nightmarish addition to the game put there on purpose. Yet, it's easy to take this glitch and create a darker, more terrifying story than the simple summer vacation presented in the game. It wouldn't be the first time fandoms have taken an otherwise innocent piece of childhood media and turned it on its head. Only this time there's actual footage to go with it. You really can head back into the game and experience the terror of August 32nd for yourself. This bug was first discovered in 2002, 2 years after the game's release in Japan. The developers claimed to have no idea that this tiny little bug would let people continue on to August 32nd, and because the game held no data for that particular date, of course, things would be messed up once you head in. Yet, the fact that the game continued to function at all impressed even them, a testament to their programming skills that the game didn't crash entirely with no data, but continued running, although in a somewhat terrifying manner. Sometimes you just don't want summer to end, and in Boku's case, you can make that a reality. Although, whether you really want to continue in such a messed up world is up to you to decide. Sometimes it might be better to just let things be. Harvest Moon is a farm simulation RPG that was first released on the Super Famicom in Japan on August 9th, 1996. You play as a young man who inherits a farm from his grandfather, and you need to bring it back from the state of despair that it's now in. While you carry out daily farming tasks like keeping the vegetables watered and raising livestock, you can also check out things around the house, and here is where this week's mystery, or perhaps creepy little Easter egg might be a better way of describing it, comes in. This particular mystery comes from the Game Boy Advance version, Friends of Mineral Town, released in 2003. there is a television in the house, and if you check that television at exactly 4:44 in the evening, instead of the usual description telling you what program is playing, you'll instead get... This lasts for quite a while, and can't be cancelled once it starts. You just have to wait for it to end. 4 is, of course, quite the unlucky number, due to its pronunciation sounding scarily similar to death, so the player gets stuck watching white noise on TV while the time 4:44 repeats over and over. Creepy. No explanation is ever given for why this happens, nor was it ever hinted that it would. It was something that players happen to stumble upon because the game features an in-game time that you can check. And of course, there's a TV near the clock. So hey, maybe something creepy happens if you check it at exactly 4:44. And, as it turned out, the developers were thinking the same thing, and put that little Easter egg in. As it stands, that's it. That's the mystery. The time repeats on the television over and over if you check it at exactly 4:44 PM, and that's it. Creepy, especially for a game that is about relaxing and running a farm and not much else, but that's it. But interestingly, that's not the end of the story. In Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, a remake of the game for the Switch, that same creepy Easter egg was implemented once again. Naturally, players rushed to see if it was still there, and it was, although this time with a bit of an upgrade. While you can get the same text of the time scrolling endlessly, this time around there are also a few other variations you can get as well. You can get the number 4 repeating with other numbers at the end like 1, 2, and 3, or the number 4 repeating on an endless loop with random kanji thrown in. Again, no explanation is ever given as to what these might mean in or out of game, but ultimately, it's just there to give a bit of a scare and perhaps reward you for checking it out in the first place. Another neat find was that if you check the TV at midnight, it'll say, "Senpai." Who is Senpai and when will he notice me? Who knows? There were also rumours that you could get Sadako to appear in the TV, perhaps inspired by the white noise and creepy 4:44 Easter egg, but to date, nobody has proven that to be true. Sadako is said to appear in numerous games as a hidden urban legend that people have never been able to prove, so it's no surprise that rumours of her show up here either. And that's it. It's not a big mystery, but it's a neat little Easter egg for those who went looking and found something a little creepy in their chill farming game. Dragon Quest V first came out on the Super Famicom in Japan on September 27th, 1992. The Dragon Quest series has been subject to various urban legends over the years, but this time we're looking at an interesting one that has never been confirmed one way or the other and, by all accounts, can only be found on the Super Famicom version of the game. This is the tale of the mysterious extra Tombstone. To very quickly sum up the game, you start as a young boy who is taken into slavery after his father is killed. The young boy escapes 10 years later and goes on various adventures. Then at some point is given a choice of who he'd like to marry, either his childhood friend Bianca or the daughter of a rich nobleman, Flora, also known as Nira in English. His wife and children are then kidnapped by monsters and he must set out to save them. The heart of this particular urban legend lies in which partner you choose to marry, and what happens after that. Do you pick your friendly but weak childhood friend from the countryside, or the haughty daughter of a rich nobleman who makes you complete a dangerous quest for him before he even considers giving you his daughter in marriage? If you choose Bianca, your childhood friend, then the game continues as normal and you won't notice anything odd. But if you pick Flora, then you might notice a little addition to the game. That addition is an extra tombstone in your hometown. Who does it belong to? How did it get there? First, according to the legend, a few conditions must be met. First, you must take Bianca with you to stay at the alpaca before you choose a woman to marry. You must also include Bianca in your party when you battle at the waterfall cave. Then, after all this, you choose Flora as your wife. Once you return to your hometown after saving Flora, then you'll notice that the 2 tombstones in town have suddenly increased to 3, and it only happens after you follow this order of events. So, who does the 3rd tombstone belong to? There have been various theories proposed over the years, but the most commonly accepted one is that it's perhaps the tombstone of Bianca and the hero's child. After all, it only occurs once you stay with her in the inn, take her out to battle, and then marry someone else. So, perhaps Bianca and the hero conceived during that time, but then he went off and married someone else, leaving her with the child. Then, for whatever unknown reason, that child died in the time the hero was out saving his wife, and so, when he returns, he finds the extra grave next to those of Bianca's parents. Why the extra grave is there has never been confirmed one way or the other, and by all accounts can only be found in the Super Famicom version after following this particular series of events. There is, of course, no name or indication who the grave actually belongs to, so the theory ultimately remains that, just a theory. But if it was the true intention all along, then it certainly shines a new light on the game's hero, and makes the world just a little darker than it already is. This week's mystery, in case you couldn't tell from the title, is a bit of a strange one. Let's head right on in. Go-Go Ackman was released for the Super Famicom in Japan on December 23rd, 1994. Made by Banpresto, it's based on the comedic Toriyama Akira manga of the same name, about a demon child named Ackman who collects souls for the Great Demon King, but isn't so great at his job. The game sees you take control of Ackman and use various weapons and items to clear stages based on stories from the manga. It's a fairly standard action-adventure game for the time it came out in, and was promoted making heavy use of Toriyama's name to shift cartridges. But before long, some strange rumours started to spread about the game. The game cartridge, in particular. It was said you could tell which households were playing the game by the large number of pigeons waiting outside. Yes, playing the game would apparently summon pigeons to your household. A lot of pigeons. But why? And was it even true to begin with? As mentioned earlier, the game was made by Banpresto. At the start of the game's release, Banpresto wasn't doing so hot financially. Rumours started to spread that, in order to save on production costs, the company turned to overseas factories to manufacture their game cartridges, and these factories used less than reputable materials when putting the cartridges together. This, it was said, occasionally led to Banpresto falling on the wrong side of the compliance laws in order to save a few dollars. As the rumour goes, the overseas factory that Banpresto contracted to make their cartridges used large amounts of lead in their products to keep prices low. This was against the law, but as long as nobody found out, no harm, no foul, right? But then these cartridges full of lead were said to give off high-frequency sound waves once put into a Super Famicom and started up. And a surprising result of this was the large number of pigeons it seemed to summon to the household playing the game in question. If you played Go-Go Ackman, made from cheap products and lead from overseas, then it would emit frequencies that would summon pigeons to your house. Everyone would know what you were playing. Weird, right? But was it true? Were cheap, lead-laden cartridges really summoning pigeons when people turned them on to play a video game? Could that even be possible? As you may or may not be aware, around the time of the Super Famicom, Nintendo were incredibly picky about the quality of their products. it was hard to get something approved by them, and Nintendo manufactured almost all game cartridges themselves. So, at the first hurdle, this rumour seems incredibly unlikely. Nintendo wanted to avoid the lack of quality that was believed to have contributed to Atari's fall in the 80s, and they did so by controlling what could and couldn't appear on their systems, with an iron fist. It's hard to believe that they'd let another company that was financially struggling at the time contract cartridge manufacturing to an outside and overseas source where Nintendo would have no control over it. But let's humour the rumour for a moment, and imagine that, sure, the cartridges were made for cheap overseas. Let's say that, yes, they were full of lead, despite being illegal. If such a thing were to occur, could this actually summon pigeons through high-frequency waves that only they could hear? Well, no. Pigeons aren't bats. They don't move around through high-frequency sound pulses, nor are they attracted to them. In fact, most birds, including pigeons, don't hear high frequencies at all. They may hear lower ones better than humans, but they can't hear higher ones. As such, they wouldn't be summoned to these high frequencies because, just like us, they can't hear them. So, where did this rumour even come from then? That part is also unknown. It has been around for decades and likely started on the playground, as many urban legends did back then, or potentially as a story in an old gaming magazine, as many others have. It became even more widespread through personal blogs and Ni channel through the 2000s, by which time it was spoken of as if it was already well known. We may never find out exactly where it came from, or even why, but it's an interesting, if strange, legend that's still passed around today. Umihara Kawase is a platforming game that was released on the Super Famicom in 1994. Several sequels featuring this cute young sushi chef have followed over the years, including her latest foray onto the Nintendo Switch with Umihara Kawase Fresh. The games see you working your way through various water worlds full of marine creatures, using your fishing line to grapple and hook your way through to the stage exits. The colours are vivid and bright, and the main character cute and cheerful, and the games have an innocent fun and charm about them. But as it turns out, not all is as it seems in the land of Umihara Kawase. Nearly 2 decades after the original game's release, developer Sakai Kiyoshi posted the hidden truth behind the game's setting on his blog. This backstory was so dark and shocking that it was soon deleted, but not before people were able to save and share it, and you can still view it through the Internet Archive as well. This dark and horrific tale contrasted sharply with the game's bright nature, leaving many confused and even frightened. As it turned out, Umihara Kawase wasn't just a cute and simple platformer. The developer had something much more dark and complex in mind. Several years before Kawase's birth, Kawase's father travelled the world as a sushi chef, pursuing the ultimate in taste. While seeking a flavour that would bring joy to others, he met Kawase's mother, who was working at a diner. These two youths on the same path got married and started their own small diner, but Kawase's father, seeking to become a pro in the uncompromising world of sushi chefs, lost himself in the warmth of his family and realised that he had lost his professional rigour. Unable to throw away his career, he once again chose to follow his dream and got divorced from Kawase's mother. Of their 2 daughters, the eldest stayed with their mother, while Kawase went to live with her father. Being a baby, Kawase had no memories of her mother at this time, and she heard nothing of her growing up either, so she had no idea that she had an older sister. Kawase's junior high years. Kawase travelled the world with her father, and gradually her eyes awoke to the same path. One day, her father went into the mountains as he always did to gather superior ingredients for his cooking. But he never returned. The police were unable to find him, and a death certificate was issued. The restaurant he lived and worked in then held a small funeral for him. After that, the restaurant's owners took care of Kawase until she graduated junior high. They recommended she go on to high school as well, but she decided to follow in the same path as her father and become a sushi chef. Around the same time, Kawase's older sister was helping at her mother's restaurant, devoting herself to the same path, and slowly found herself being more and more drawn into the professional side of things. Her mother, seeing her daughter being drawn into the same path as her ex-husband, prepared herself to let her daughter follow that same dream. However, one day, her daughter overheard a customer boasting that one can't become a professional chef unless they've tasted the liver of a pufferfish. So while her mother was out, she illegally prepared and ate one, dying from poisoning. Kawase at 19. In order to hone her skills as a sushi chef, Kawase entered a restaurant with a sign out the front looking for new workers. She ate the simple meals served to her there, yet she was shocked by the taste. It was like nothing she'd ever tasted before, just like a mother's home cooking. She attempted to leave the restaurant, realizing how much her own skills were lacking, but the owner stopped her, having realized this girl was her daughter the moment she laid eyes on her. Kawase decided to start her training at this restaurant all over again from scratch. Kawase was unaware the woman was her real mother, but the days passed full of joy and love. During this time, she heard stories of her dead sister as well, unaware that she was her real sister. One day, when her mother set out for the market, she overheard a conversation and learned that the owner of the restaurant was her real mother. Her father died while searching for the ultimate taste experience, and her sister died while eating pufferfish she had prepared illegally. Kawase realized she'd also lost sight of her own path as well. She wrote a farewell letter, and on her way out of the restaurant, her mother, understanding everything, handed her some rice balls she had prepared herself, telling her they were the first taste she had of her mother's cooking, and they would also be the last. "The path I am on is a harsh one," Kawase told her mother, rejecting the rice balls and leaving, crying on the inside all the while. She had learnt the true depths of the path she must follow. The game is set in Kawase's deep psyche, and the visuals are representative of that. They are, so to speak, like viewing the dreams Kawase has at night. Always seeking love from parents who were never satisfied, the images in her mind have become rather dreary. And as she is always striving towards her goal of achieving the ultimate taste, this is represented in her battle with the fish. However, the real battle is essentially with herself, and that is the nature of the game. The true fight is within Kawase herself. If you've been watching the images of the game all this time, then you can probably see why people were shocked to discover that this was the background in the developer's mind the whole time when he and others were making the game. It was supposed to be a fun and bright platformer with a cute female character, yet the game's true intentions were something far darker. The game was really a look into the broken psyche of a girl who had lost everything, all in the pursuit of a career that had already claimed 2 family members and delivered her mother, her only remaining family, unending heartbreak. Kawase wasn't literally in a water world doing battle with fish to escape. The visuals were representative of her battle with the harsh path she had chosen, the path that had destroyed her family. After people complained about how dark this setting was, Sakai clarified that this wasn't the official setting of the game, but rather something he'd written down as his personal view on matters. In fact, the 2013 DS game, Sayonara Umihara Kawase, is the only game to officially even call her a travelling sushi chef. Yet, the damage was done. Now the thought would always be in the back of people's minds while playing. Was it really nothing more than a fun platformer battling across various water worlds full of fish? Or was the game something darker? A deep dive into the broken psyche of a depressed young woman, unable to stop herself from following the same path that had already taken 2 of her family members and severed her relationship with her mother. Released on the Sega Saturn on August 8, 1997, the game Koden Koureijutsu Hyaku Monogatari came with some interesting marketing. It was claimed that the game itself was cursed, and if you played it, horrifying things would happen to you in the real world. The only way around this was to hang up the charm included in the game, to ward off the evil playing it would attract. But could such a thing really exist? Was the game really cursed? As you may be aware, I've been working through this game myself and translating the stories for this very channel. I'm about a third of the way through the game at this point, and whenever I start the game up, it always gives me the same warning that strange and scary things may happen unless I take precautions. Naturally, nothing strange has ever happened to me, but if you search the internet, you'll find all sorts of stories from people who claim that, yes, the game did curse them. First, let's take a look at some of the things that are supposed to happen. There are claims that you will hear rapping noises and lights will flicker while you are playing the game. You may also suffer from sleep paralysis at night, even when not playing the game. These things will be even worse if you don't hang the charm that comes with the game somewhere to protect yourself, and if you just happen to forget, strange supernatural phenomena will likely remind you. Then, once you get all the way to the end and finish all 100 stories, well, the Koureijutsu in the title refers to necromancy, so you can probably guess what will supposedly happen. Numerous stories have been posted online about the apparently strange things that have happened to people while or after playing this game. For example, one anonymous poster bought the game second-hand, only to discover that the charm was missing. Dismissing it because, well, it was second-hand, the man then finished all 100 stories, and as he was playing the bonus story, his phone suddenly rang. He nervously answered it to find out it was just his girlfriend. But as they were chatting, she suddenly asked him, "Is there someone there with you?" The man was alone, but apparently his girlfriend could hear another muffled voice in the room with him, and it sounded like a woman crying. Another person claimed that they played the game after a long, hard day and started to drift off while listening to one of the Inagawa Junji narrated stories. At some point, they suddenly heard a strange voice coming through their headphones, so thinking the story was finished, they sat up. But rather than the candles that appear on screen after a story ends, they saw an old person's face on their TV, missing the lower half of their face. The face convulsed, twitched, and distorted. Then a creepy voice came through the headphones. "I've been watching you all this time. I've been watching you all this time." The person panicked and tried to turn the game off, but it wouldn't. A cacophony of sound effects from the game blared out of the headphones, and when they were finally able to get it to stop, they checked the game's memory card to find the name had changed from Hyaku Monogatari to Gi 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 Gi. Yet another person claimed to have a nightmare after playing the game of being choked. However, when that person woke up from their dream, they discovered white hands above them, actually trying to choke them. These types of stories are a dime a dozen, and you can find all sorts of haunted claims from people who have played the game. But is it real? Well, of course not. I'm playing the game myself and nothing strange has happened. It made for great marketing when the game was released, however, and places like Channel do love sharing scary stories that no one can confirm nor deny. After all, the old Edo game of Hyaku Monogatari was literally about inviting a spirit in once you finished 100 stories, so why wouldn't the same apply to a more modern equivalent? Either way, if you're feeling brave, you can still grab copies of the game from eBay or other such places, so if you really want to test it out for yourself, the technology is right there. The game Kowai Shashin was released for the PlayStation in 2002. The game sees you playing as a spirit medium who must exorcise the spirits residing in various ghost photos. It's a fairly standard formula for a Japanese horror game, but that wasn't what had people talking about it most. No, according to the rumours, the game itself was haunted. For numerous years, stories have been going around that the photos used in Kowai Shashin were real, actual ghost photos. And not only that, but numerous developers who worked on the game found themselves subjected to all sorts of mysterious phenomena, and in some cases, even got sick or died. Some sort of weird or supernatural occurrence while working on a horror game in Japan is pretty much a rite of passage these days. Anything from electrical failures, illnesses, accidents, even unrelated acts of God can be chalked up to the malevolent forces working behind the scenes of apparently all horror games, and these stories can then be used to promote them. In that sense, Kowai Shashin was no different. But what's different here is how long-lasting these rumours have been, and the fact that, for the longest time, people struggled to fully debunk them. So, let's head in and take a look at what was really going on. Kowai Shashin is an extremely rare game these days, and, if you can even find it, often goes for hundreds of dollars. When you add some ghostly urban legends on top of that, that's a lot of people interested in tracking down an old and hard to find game. The perfect location for a ghost story or two to blossom. Let's take a look at some of the Amazon reviews. The game itself is okay, but the stories of what took place behind the scenes are terrifying. Some people even died. The story behind the development of this game is terrifying. If you look that up and then play the game, it will scare you to death. Interesting. The stories behind this game are so common that they even pop up in numerous Amazon reviews. Another review, which is almost a novel in length, goes into more details of the rumours surrounding the game. In short, numerous people who worked on the game were reportedly injured during development, and some even took their own lives. The reviewer claimed to know a friend who started working at the company making the game, and they suggested that real-life ghost photos should be used in it. This is nothing new. Games and TV shows use real ghost photos all the time, so it wasn't an entirely out there suggestion. Yet, they apparently struggled to find good photos, and they had 3 conditions that had to be met. First, the photos had to be real. Second, the spirits residing in the photos couldn't have been exorcised or the photo itself purified. And lastly, they needed to get the permission of whoever owned said photo. In the end, they were able to get roughly 30 usable photos and set to work. They wanted to have roughly 2 to 3 spirits in each photo, but they also had to be somewhat visible, so rather than using the photos exactly as is, they edited them to remove unnecessary orbs, enlarge spirits, and sometimes even copy spirits over to other photos when there were too few or too many. Depending on your point of view, they weren't really faking the photos, just cleaning things up and moving things around that already existed. The one rule that nobody was allowed to break was that the spirits themselves couldn't be faked. They could edit the photos to remove things, or make the spirits clearer, but they were under no circumstances allowed to fake a ghost. As this work proceeded, numerous developers found themselves falling ill, becoming exhausted, and even succumbing to depression. Some even quit unable to take it any longer. The company working on the game, Media Entertainment, was only a small company at the time and ended up relying on numerous part-time workers to get the job done. By the time the debugging phase rolled around, the developers were too scared to test the game at night, and so they had to play comical music in the background to help them get through it. It was around this time that even more strange things started happening. They heard noises they couldn't explain in the office. One developer passed out and cracked his tooth. He was taken to the hospital and diagnosed as epileptic, but when he was released and went home, he apparently cut his own thumb off with a knife. He claimed to remember doing it, but he had no idea why. By this point, the other developers feared the game was cursed. Even more strange events went down, including another developer who had to be hospitalized, and in the end, the remaining staff visited a shrine to be cleansed. Yet this still wasn't the end. The executive producer on the game, Kei Kawa, suddenly stopped showing up to work. People feared that he was the latest victim, but the company claimed otherwise, stating that he was simply seeing a therapist, but he was otherwise okay. The man himself called into work and said he was feeling better and would be in that very same day. Yet, he never showed up. They later found his body in some train station toilets. He had hung himself. This station was in the opposite direction of his office and heading towards the location of one of the photos in the game. It seemed the game had claimed yet another victim. If this all sounds rather creepypasta-ish to you, well, that's because it is. This Amazon review is nothing more than a copy-paste from another website that collected creepy stories from Nichan. Nichan is of course no stranger to making up creepy stories about video games, but this one really struck a mark with people. But how much truth, if any, was there to the story? First of all, it should be pointed out that when Kowai Shashin released in 2002, there were no stories about strange happenings behind the scenes. Numerous horror games have used this to their advantage when promoting, selling the idea that the development itself was cursed, and therefore, the game itself must be terrifying. Yet none of this was done with Kowai Shashin, nor did the game ever claim that the ghost photos used in it were real. They were only ever referred to as ghost photos. Nothing more, nothing less. If real photos had been used, you could bet that they would have been announcing that from the rooftops for all to hear. The story makes a lot of claims, but in particular, it mentions that Kei Kawa, the executive producer, killed himself towards the end of development. How true was this? As it turns out, a man by the name of Ogawa was indeed the representative director of Media Entertainment at the time, as well as executive producer on Kowai Shashin. His name in the story was given as Kei Kawa. Another pronunciation for the initial kanji in his name is Ko, which is likely where the K came from. But he's not only listed as the executive producer for Kowai Shashin, which came out in July 2002, but also for Korokoro Postonin, another game released in October the same year. This is somewhat of a problem, because if the story is to be believed, Ogawa would have already been dead by this point. How was he able to work on another game then? Simple. He didn't die. The story wasn't true. But that also wasn't the end of it. Media Entertainment went bankrupt only a year later, and in 2008, Ogawa passed away for real. He may not have died in a train station heading towards the location found in one of the cursed photos from his game, but he did pass away several years later regardless. Although it's uncertain when the urban legends about Kowai Shashin first started to spread, much of the evidence suggests that it was around 2007. Nichan threads from November of that year featured the same story that was posted in the Amazon review, referring to Kei Kawa's mysterious death. Other posts mentioned Ogawa apparently disappearing from the public eye in 2003. So hey, maybe he really did die in 2002 and that was why. Yet at this point in time, Ogawa was still alive, although he really would pass away just a few months later. A strange coincidence or something else? No cause of death has ever been given, but either way, he didn't pass away in a train station toilet back in 2002, and he even went on to produce other games. This urban legend is just that, but it certainly adds an interesting layer to what was an otherwise pretty ordinary game. You can always count on Nii-chan to create something terrifying out of nothing. It's their specialty, after all. In November 2001, a PlayStation 2 game called Toro to Kyuujitsu was released in Japan. In the game, you can walk around the real harbour town of Misaki in Kanagawa Prefecture with the Sony character Toro. Toro occasionally asks questions and makes remarks, and you can talk to people from around the town as well. It's a laid-back game that doesn't have any particular goal in mind, but lets you walk around and explore at your own pace. That wasn't what got people talking, however. It wasn't long until players discovered something in the window of a certain house while out exploring that set the internet message boards on fire. It seemed the game had captured a ghost. The house in question can be found a short distance from the starting point of the game, but if you head there first thing, you might be disappointed. The game cycles through morning, evening, and night, and if you head to the house during the morning, then you won't notice anything out of the ordinary. If you wait a short while and head over during the evening, however, you'll find yourself face to face with what looks like a massive face taking up an entire second floor window. The woman's eyes, nose, and hair are clearly visible, but she's so large that the top half of her face takes up the whole window. Had a children's game actually captured a ghost? Some people certainly thought so. It's hard to deny that it does look like a face, and if you talk to Toro nearby, he also says something strange, something unsettling, considering what appears to be a giant face nearby looking at you. Toro can say this either directly in front of the house or on the stairs leading up, depending on where you talk to him first. And the game never specifies just what exactly it is that's caught his attention. But the fact he only says it here, near the giant face in the window, caught many people off guard. Was the face in the window on purpose? What exactly was going on? Sony has never said anything one way or another regarding the face, but that hasn't stopped people from discussing it on the internet, which they still do to this day. Numerous theories have been given as to what it might really be. Some believe it's an actual ghostly face captured on film, while others argue that it's just a trick of the evening light, reflecting either the furniture inside the room or the house opposite in the window glass. If you visit in the morning, it's too bright to see anything in the window, but you can see the surroundings reflected in the other windows, making this the most likely answer. You can visit this same area in Google Maps quite easily these days, something which wasn't available at the time the game came out. You can find the area at the bottom of Tokyo Bay, then zoom in on the harbour town of Misaki. Google Street View will take you to the same locations as those seen in the game, and you can get right up to the haunted window in question. Of course, there's no face visible in Street View, but you can quite clearly see the reflection of nearby objects and all sorts of shadows on the windows. We can even take a look around the area, which you can't do in the game, to see the possible culprits that could have been creating what appears to be a face. On an interesting side note, if you go down this side street not available in the game and get a look at the windows head on, you can see something else in the next house that looks a little like... This may be one of those mysteries that's never entirely settled, but the most likely explanation isn't of the supernatural variety, but just a simple trick of the light. In 2002, the PlayStation 2 visual novel Kamaitachi no Yoru 2 was released. Much like the first game, Kamaitachi no Yoru 2 was a horror mystery in which a murder had taken place and the player had to figure out the truth behind it. Shortly after release, however, players noticed something strange in the game's opening cinematic. Something that perhaps shouldn't have been there. Take a look for yourself and see if you can spot what. The game takes place on a long-abandoned island that once housed a large prison, but that wasn't what got people talking. At roughly the 22-second mark, as the camera zooms through an old shrine and stops briefly on some old shrine gates, players notice something in the center of the screen, something imposed on the wood. It appeared to be a ghostly face. Rumors quickly spread like wildfire that the game had captured a real ghost on film. But had they really? It was a horror game, after all, so if there really was a ghost in the game's opening, who's to say that it wasn't put there on purpose? At first, the company never said anything either way. Players argued over internet message boards whether the face on the shrine gate was actually that of a ghost, whether it was just the way the light had fallen, or whether the game's creators had done so intentionally. Slipping a ghost face into the game's opening would create all sorts of talk about the game, after all, helping to promote it and create hype for sales. And if that was their intention, it worked, because nearly 20 years later, people are still talking about it. Their silence on the matter also seemed somewhat suspicious. Was it true that it was all nothing but a big fake? An optical illusion created to get people talking about the game? In 2017, 15 years after the game's release, a Japanese YouTuber got in contact with the game's creators at Chunsoft to settle the matter once and for all. Speaking to a representative on the phone, he brought up the ghost face and asked whether the company could confirm that they, first of all, knew that the face was even there, and second, whether it was placed in the opening movie intentionally. The representative promised to confirm with the game's creators and would then get back to him. It turned out that the creators had no idea of the supposed ghostly face, and they most certainly hadn't put anything in there intentionally. They were surprised to hear of it, and it appeared their silence over all these years was simply because they'd never actually heard of the rumors. While that answered one question, it still left players with another problem. If it wasn't put into the game on purpose, did that mean the game had actually captured a real ghost? There's obviously no proof one way or the other, but the most likely explanation, as with most of these cases, is lighting. The angle of the shot, combined with the lighting and textures of the wood, simply creates the illusion of a face. It's certainly fitting with the theme of the game, and to this day people still talk about it, debating its authenticity. Perhaps one of the most famous and well-known mysteries or urban legends when it comes to video games in Japan is the strange bugs that can be found in Kamaitachi no Yoru 2. The game was released on PlayStation 2 on July 18th, 2002. It's a sequel to the first Kamaitachi no Yoru, which I've translated on this very channel before, and like its predecessor, it's also a visual novel. The game has never been translated into English before, and is quite lengthy, with numerous scenarios you can work through that will take many, many hours to complete. If you do manage to complete them all, however, earning yourself something called the Golden Bookmark, then you might find yourself in for a little surprise. Let's take a look. The game was a bit of a departure from the tone of the first. The first game worked as a mystery in which you had to solve a murder, but the second went a little more supernatural, a little more violent, a little more grotesque, and as such, it wasn't always well received by fans of the first. It was, however, a much bigger technical upgrade in which 3D was used to great effect, along with higher quality music and special effects. The original first appeared on the Super Famicom, after all, and was then later remade for the PlayStation 1. Now, visual or sound novels, as these are called in Japan, generally aren't known for massive game-breaking bugs. They're novels, after all, with a bunch of text and some music in the background, and that's mostly it. But players who completed Kamaitachi no Yoru 2 and got the coveted Golden Bookmark started to notice something strange. It didn't always happen, but occasionally players would come across a bug where the screen turned into a strange blinking mosaic, or they would get taken to an entirely new screen with a bunch of text that didn't make any sense. Another even more terrifying bug featured a face suddenly appearing on the screen that blurred in and out as text played over the top. What on earth was going on? In all, there are 4 main bugs that have been found. Getting them to appear isn't an exact science, as they appear to happen randomly, even if you do everything correctly. But to even get the chance to see them, you first have to carry out a series of steps. First, of course, is completing the entire game. This gives you the Golden Bookmark. As you play through the game, at some point, the screen will suddenly change into a blinking mosaic, and you'll be given some rather terrifying options that don't appear to have anything to do with the story. A. Get cursed. B. Choose suffering. C. Warning. D. Why will you die? It doesn't matter what you choose here. The bug you get will be random. In one, the screen will suddenly change to some blue wavy lines moving in the background as largely incomprehensible text scrolls across the screen and a painful beep plays in the background. You can take a quick look at it here. This goes on for well over a minute before returning to the story like nothing happened. Another slightly less strange bug will simply give you some more corrupted text and flash to another image in the background before returning to the same screen, as you can see happening in the background right here. But another slightly more terrifying bug will instead switch to a scene of numerous flashing images with text that appears to be blocked out. When paused, the images seem to show dead bodies, skulls, and people in pain. A shrill sound also plays in the background, which you can hear here. This also continues for about a minute, until finally some legible text shows up. This is that type of game, repeats over and over, before that too corrupts and repeats, and then the game suddenly returns to normal. Weird. The final and perhaps most terrifying bug features a blue face that warps in and out, and this one actually tells a story. It's rather lengthy, but here goes. Have you heard that Kamaitachi 2 was a cursed game? Well, it doesn't matter whether you have or not, because it has already begun. I heard the rumors. The staff spoke of them, that they heard strange voices. Apparently some of them have seen twisted faces. That's a new direction, I said with a laugh. I was staring at the monitor for close to an hour then. Yes, just like you're doing right now. But our positions are a little different. I was the game's scenario writer. It was my first time playing a ROM for debugging. The production effects were great, and I must say the game was shaping up to be quite interesting as well. The first time I saw it, I didn't pay much attention to it. The thing moving on the other side of the monitor. When I suddenly looked over, there was nothing there. It appeared when I started looking at the monitor. It looked like a human figure. It seemed to be watching me. I was playing the game in the Chunsoft staff room. It was past 11 p.m, but there were still a few staff members there. Of course, I was one of them. But the thing I still remember is the voice I heard at the same time. A scratchy voice whispered in my ear. I didn't know what it was saying. I jumped and looked around, but nobody was there. After that day, I started to see the figure more often. Behind the showroom in the store, in the window of the apartment building when I looked up, on the subway platform across from me, at the table across from me when I was eating. The figure was getting more and more daring, reaching an arm out from some documents, peeking through the crack in the door, showing something like a finger from a closed book. It was a kind of blue shadow. It was transparent, so I could see through it. Eventually, I started to hear their voices. At first, it was a grating whisper. I thought I was sick. I saw the doctor, and he said I was neurotic. I had an idea. It was because the deadline for Kamaitachi was approaching. Every single day the director scolded me, the producers yelled at me, and the programmers berated me. I was exhausted. I took a tranquilizer and went home. The next day, I invited a female friend out to dinner for the first time in a while. On the way home, we found a print machine that appeared to have been dumped just off the side of the road. I pressed the confirm button between some characters I didn't recognize. A print came out. That pale blue face was there between ours. But unlike before, this time I could see its expression. The eyes, nose, and mouth all told a single story. Resentment. A curse like poisonous liquid dripped down from its face like sweat. My friend screamed. I don't really remember how I calmed her down, nor how I got home. Next thing I knew, I was at home sitting in front of the TV screen. Kamaitachi no Yoru 2 looked back at me from it. And then I figured it out. What they really were. They were corpses in the vast labyrinth of text. They were the characters who were killed in the game. The characters killed in brutal ways over and over on the other side of the monitor. They appeared to take revenge on those involved with the game, starting with me. That's right. The moment I heard the voice, a face appeared on the monitor. I couldn't tell if the blood-stained face was that of Midori, or Mari, or maybe Kayama. But I do remember all of the laughter and the firm, cold hand that touched my shoulder. Then I passed out. My name disappeared from the staff roll, and the person who took my place remained. But I myself didn't disappear from the game. I'm still here, just like this. Well, that's the end of my story. It might not be too late for you yet. If you haven't heard their voices, that is. As this little creepypasta plays out, you can hear what sounds like electricity crackling in the background. And, just like all the other bugs, it suddenly switches back to the previous scene like nothing ever happened once it's done. It's certainly a little unnerving, but if you've made it this far, you're probably asking one very important question. Is this really a bug? A bug is something unintentional, after all. A glitch that shouldn't be there. But this is a full story, and was clearly meant to be found. Well, that's the thing. The developers have never addressed these strange occurrences that Japanese fans simply refer to as bugs, but they're perhaps best described as Easter eggs. They're clearly deliberate, and were meant to be found. If it was simply the bug with the random text and glitchy image, then sure, we could probably chalk that up to a glitch. But the full creepypasta, talking about how the game is cursed, alongside the other bug with the images of dead and pained faces, makes it seem like it's a little more than just that. They were deliberately placed, but the fact that nearly 20 years later they've never officially been addressed, as well as the randomness of getting them to appear, keeps them as a nice little mystery that people still talk about today. But what do you guys think about this one? A bug? An Easter egg? Or something else entirely? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.